Something I feel often gets lost with this genre is the true meaning of the word horror. In particular, I'm talking about the difference between horror and terror. Terror is the momentary fear you get from something scary. You're frightened, yes, but nothing more. Horror is what sticks with you. It's what shakes you to the core and makes you think about it well after it's over. When a show throws nothing but shock scenes at you meant to elicit an immediate frightened response, that's terror. However, that only lasts so long. A jump scare, for example, might have you screaming for a few seconds, but you'll quickly calm down. The issue with shock factor is it's a cheap, easy way to achieve the targeted response, but doesn't actually last. Today, under the scope, I take a look at Another, a mystery-focused anime that relies far too heavily on shock factor for the majority of its thrills. I'll try to keep the plot summary to a minimum, as I think it's best to go into this show knowing as little as possible. 26 years ago, tragedy struck Class 3-3 of Yomi North Junior High when a promising young student named Misaki abruptly died. Things went from sad to horrifying, however, when shortly thereafter a student proclaimed, "Misaki's not dead, Misaki's right there," and everyone in the class agreed with him, going the entire year pretending as if Misaki was still alive. After graduation, when they took their class photo, they noticed an extra student, standing there in the background of the photo. Misaki. Fast forward to present day, where our main character transfers into the very same classroom and wonders about a mysterious girl who just so happens to be named Misaki, sitting in the back row. Who is this girl? And why does no one else in the class seem to notice her? Another's first episode wonderfully sets up this intriguing and downright creepy mystery before solving it in the most boring way possible and moving on to a far less interesting one. It tries to come off as this serious horror mystery, but quickly falls flat on its face as the show wears on. By trying to make both great horror and great mystery, it ended up failing to do either. Another is really a tale of two halves. The first slowly introduces you to the world and characters, providing some truly unsettling moments and actually leaving you genuinely perplexed as to what the fuck is going on. The second, on the other hand, completely switches gears, bouncing back and forth between hilariously over-the-top death scenes, hard-to-follow info dumps, filler bullshit, and, oddly enough, action sequences. It relies on a series of frankly ridiculous coincidences to push the plot forward, most of which I found hard to buy. Its explanation of said happenstance is pretty much brushed to the side. You just have to take their word for it. In fact, Another seems pretty averse to any kind of explanations at all. For a show with as many supernatural elements in it, most of which with unbelievably specific details, there was a frustrating lack of reasoning behind it all. Another's biggest sin, though, was its reveal around the midway point. In one fell swoop, it managed to resolve the mystery surrounding the class, the deaths, and Misaki before the show had even gotten to the final stretch. Now, that in and of itself is not necessarily a bad thing, but the story all but came to a standstill until the very end. The characters foolishly and unbelievably avoided the solution for several episodes, almost as if they were biding their time until the climax. Meanwhile, they're getting brutally killed off one after the next. There's a solid chunk in the middle of the series where nothing of any real importance happens, when it feels like each episode it's twiddling its thumbs until the big death scene at the end. Seriously, they even managed to squeeze a fucking beach episode in it. Oh, and this too.
Misaki!
The end, however, is where it really crashes and burns. Literally. For the majority of the series, the students are pretty much emotionless and stone-faced, and then, all of a sudden, at the snap of a finger, they turn into ravenous killers out for blood. Why? Things needed some more chaos. The outrageous acceleration of the plot in the final 2 episodes, made worse by the slowness of the middle, made it hard to take seriously. Another's writing is no better. The show manufactures a lot of fake suspense. You know, when a character's like, the extra person is, and then boom, interrupted. Or for another example, characters will be in the middle of very important conversations on their cell phones when all of a sudden, the phones malfunction. It's not only an annoying way of prolonging the big reveal, but also a lazy ploy by the writers to try to create suspense that should already be there. The answers to the mysteries are never found out through some sort of Sherlock-level sleuthing, but rather info dumps or Deus Ex Machina superpowers Ryogi Shiki style. Again, it's the easy way out. What's the easiest way for a show to solve a mystery? Have a character already know the answer. Giving credit where credit is due, though, I thought the twist itself was handled well, as it would be pretty hard to guess unless you knew what you were supposed to be looking for from the beginning. Another story can really be broken down into 3 parts. An intriguing, downright unsettling beginning that had me hooked, a slow, dull middle that definitely bored me a bit, and a ridiculous ending that completed the show's rapid and precipitous fall from grace. The cast. If you thought I was harsh on the story, you ain't seen nothing yet. Male lead Koichi Sakakibara is like every other generic mystery MC ever. Sticks his nose in places he shouldn't? Check. Doesn't actually bring anything to the table? Check. Feels like nothing more than a plot device? Check, check, and check. I think you get the gist. Koichi is essentially the viewer's way into the plot. He doesn't know anything we don't, and vice versa. This is fine, except it never changes. Koichi never actually finds any of the answers himself. They're always given to him. He's merely an observer to the plot. Still, he's not the dumbest character on the show, as that title has to go to the supporting cast. First of all, most of them are literal ammunition for the show's shock factor, easily tossed aside as soon as they're no longer necessary to the plot. Second, many of them are fucking morons. Example? Oh, let me go swim half a mile out into the ocean to retrieve this dollar store beach ball even though there's this curse thing brutally murdering my friends and loved ones one after the other. Sounds safe to me. Finally, they, like Koichi, bring nothing to the table. They all perfectly fit their individually packaged character tropes and hang around just long enough for the show to try to make you feel something other than momentary terror as they're brutally killed off one after the other. But, slight problem. It didn't do that. Granted, that doesn't mean I didn't feel anything when they died. I'm not a heartless monster. I will never look at an umbrella the same way again. But it was never more than just, holy fuck, that escalated quickly. Because I was never attached to them, their death scenes, in other words, their only purpose on the show, never left a real impact on me besides shock factor. The only side character I want to specifically mention is Izumi Akazawa, the head of countermeasures for Class 3-3. Spoiler alert, she's not very good at her job. Basically all she does is shit on the only character I like and act like everything isn't her fault when it definitely is. The show tries to make her this sympathetic character, but ultimately she's just an annoying stereotypical tsundere brat. Anybody who tries to tell you her story is tragic needs to head over to the nearest dictionary and freshen up on their vocabulary. God, I sound like a dick. Moving on. Finally, let's get to Mei Misaki, one of the few characters whose presence didn't annoy me. Misaki provides the show with its best moments of horror and mystery. She's the primary reason Another was so great in the beginning, due to the intrigue of her character. The ultimate revelation about who she actually is was pretty surprising, even if a bit status quo. Unfortunately, this is also around the same time that the show takes a nosedive. Still, her character remains a bright spot throughout, with one major exception. In the final episodes of the series, we come to find out that she actually could have prevented everything from happening if she had just opened her fucking trap in the beginning. Besides being a convenient Deus Ex Machina solution to the problem, it's an infuriating plot hole that the show tries to pass off as otherwise. Other than that, though, Misaki is easily the best of the bunch, and the only character I actually enjoyed each and every time. If it seems like I've been overly harsh on the show so far, take a deep breath because this next section is going to be smooth sailing. PA Works did a wonderful job with Another's animation. It's one of those shows where nearly every frame could be made into a poster and hung on a wall. It never fails to set that dark, dreary atmosphere and generally adds to the unsettling vibe of the show. It's at its finest during the death scenes, where you can tell a little extra budget was slipped in to give them the full effect. The blood in particular looked, shall we say, authentic, and definitely made for some of the most well-animated scenes in the entire series. The soundtrack was pretty standard fare when it comes to horror, but it also did a good job of setting the mood and atmosphere. Outside of the main theme, it's not something I would listen to on its own, but that doesn't necessarily mean it wasn't good. To put it another way, I can't imagine the background music without the scenes it was attached to, but I also can't imagine the scenes without the background music. The opening was a definite skip for me, but eh. In my opinion, a good opening definitely adds to a series, but a bad one doesn't necessarily take away from it. After all, you can always just skip it. Another's animation is simply fantastic, and the sound isn't too far off either. Really, I've come to expect nothing less from PA Works, the same studio that brought us the beautifully animated Nagi no Asukara, and they certainly didn't disappoint this time around. Something I always look for in a show is a reason. Why did the shit that happened to the characters happen? What was the purpose or meaning behind it all? And in others' case, all I can come up with is shock value. The entire point of the show is to give you that momentary sense of fear that comes from those brutal death scenes and shocking reveals. This isn't some sort of deep social commentary. It's entertainment. No more, no less. Despite the massive amounts of criticism I've levied on it, though, I did enjoy the series to some extent. For all of its problems, I still ended each episode wanting to see more. The question then becomes, is it worth watching? While I'm inclined to say no, I'm still going to barely, and I mean barely, give it an approval rating of try, and an overall score of 3.0 umbrellas out of 5, for the sole reason I still found some modicum of enjoyment. The pass rating is the ultimate stamp of failure I can give a show, so I try to reserve it for shows I can't find any good reason to watch. As many issues as I had with it, Another does have its perks between the great animation, an interesting female lead, and a strong start. It's a quick, easy watch, and if you sound intrigued, go ahead and give it a shot. That being said, I really don't see why this show is so popular. Anybody who tells you this is the best horror anime of all time simply hasn't seen enough horror anime. If you're looking for something similar to another, I could recommend Higurashi no Nakukoro ni, but in the interest of variety, I'll go with Future Diary for another show that relies on shock factor, has a lot of death, and is probably more popular than it should be. Also check out Monster for a psychological mystery done right. And that's all for me. Be sure to tune in next week as I continue Horror Month, this time taking a look at Hellsing Ultimate, and go vote for which horror anime you want me to review last by following the link in the description. If you're feeling particularly generous and want to help me make better content, please consider checking out my Patreon page. Any help goes a long way. As always, please subscribe if you enjoyed the video and feel free to follow me on Twitter at UTS Reviews. Thanks for watching. See you next time.